United a bit later, touch on Ronaldo a little bit, but I wanted to delve into Arsenal and first of all talk about the Mahalo Mudryk deal. I know one that you've been very, very close to yourself. You've interviewed him. There's talks today that he's in a London hotel because Arsenal fans do detective work. But a second bid is imminent, it appears. We know personal terms are agreed. There was a little talk of a hijack from Chelsea. What is the latest with Mudryk? How close is the deal to completion? And could there be a sting in the towel from Chelsea, Ben?
You know, the transfer window's opened when Arsenal fans are zooming in on pictures of Mudryk in a hotel gym and trying to work out if there's any logo on the slippers or whether or not it's English in the background on the pin-up board. And then we had, by the way, last summer, which was very impressive, Arsenal fans going on real estate sites and looking at whether Yuri Tielemans was selling his house. And they zoomed in on the fridge and they realized that there were two pictures on the fridge of Tielemans' kids. And therefore, they could categorically state that those pictures were from Tielemans' house. So respect to Arsenal fans in terms of their detective work. But ultimately, with Mudryk, where he is kind of irrelevant at this point because it's all about Arsenal and Shakhtar. And even if Mudryk was in London, it wouldn't make much difference because still no final agreement between Shakhtar and Arsenal, but high confidence that it's heading in that direction. So I've obviously been covering the Mudryk story since last summer. I was one of the first to say that Arsenal was seriously interested, and I was the first to interview Mudryk about 3 months ago, and he told me that he couldn't say no to Arsenal. And I've also spoken to Dario Serna, the sporting director. It's nice with these deals, by the way, because I can actually name the source because they were on-record interviews. And that's quite refreshing because the amount of times as a journalist that you get asked, who's your source? And of course, we're never going to say. And the amount of times you get told you've got no source. And even with stories like this, still often get told, you don't know anything about Shakhtar. You've got no contacts at Shakhtar. And you're thinking to yourself, go on to CBS's website or go onto my channel because I've actually interviewed them exclusively on record. So I can thankfully give the context and name the names. And when I spoke to Mudryk, he was very clear about his ambition and that he wants to move to the Premier League and that Arsenal is his team of preference. And when I spoke to Dario Serna, he said that a lot of money is required. But what we have to remember here is that last summer, a lot of money was 45 to 50 million euros. Now, a lot of money, as far as Shakhtar are publicly saying, is 100 million euros. But that's just gamesmanship. So Arsenal are confident because they believe that the framework of a deal is in place. And their first bid can almost be described as a marker, not a bid, in the sense that they knew it would be rejected, but you're putting something down there to show the valuation. And actually, Arsenal's valuation in their first bid in the mid-60s euros wise, and of course in millions, was ballpark what they think a deal is going to get done for. It was just too add-on heavy. So then Arsenal will go back and forth with Shakhtar and they'll use intermediaries because it's quite difficult to get a deal done there. It's a very atypical region. You need local knowledge to pull off a negotiation. And Arsenal know that, which is why some of the contact is club to club and some of the contact is using intermediaries that know exactly how to get business done with Shakhtar. And ultimately, the simple thing with this is Arsenal will move from a add-on heavy offer in the mid-60s to a guaranteed fee heavy offer, either in the mid-60s or at the top end pushing 75 million euros. And somewhere around 55 million euros, 15 million add-ons, maybe 5 more, maybe 5 less. It just depends where you put the weight of money in the guaranteed fee or in the add-ons. But something in that ballpark is likely to get done. And as of early yesterday, no second offer had come in. That could have changed in the last 24 hours, but there's a grey area because it's likely to be a verbal offer. As things get closer, clubs don't always take the time to make formal offers. They go verbally back and forth to get the framework of an agreement in principle. And then once they know they're there, they put down the bid because obviously they don't want to waste their time doing any formal offer and then it getting rejected out of hand. So it's quite a fluid process, but Arsenal are confident of agreeing this one. They believe they can get it at a value significantly below 100 million euros and there's full player buy-in. It's going to be a long-term contract. I understand that it can be 5 years, but potentially even 6, because there'll be that option to extend. And there's full buy-in from Mudryk. So it's all about finding a number. And a bit like Chelsea and Enzo Fernandez, Arsenal are not going to get messed around here. Arsenal are not going to pay above what they believe to be the odds. Arsenal are not going to put all of their eggs in the Mudryk basket in the sense of only focusing on him. He's very much the priority, but were Shakhtar to say no, 100 million or nothing, Arsenal would walk away. But that's not where we're at, because privately, there is a real feeling that this one is going to get done for, as I've already said, well below the 100 million euros being quoted. And it's one to watch over the next few days or week, because I think that Arsenal want to move quickly on this one now. And as I've said all along, there is optimism that they can get a deal done with Shakhtar that's much closer to their valuation.
Yeah, I think that I followed your lead on this from its inception, really, due to the direct contact that you've had with Mudryk. I always remember one of the original interviews where there was the way it was kind of perceived is that he didn't just say he would join Arsenal. He specifically name dropped Arsenal. It wasn't as though Arsenal were presented to him as would you like to join Arsenal maybe? And he went, oh yeah, that'd be nice, being respectful. It was, would you like to be in the Premier League? And it was, yes, I want to join Arsenal, essentially. I'm paraphrasing, but that always led you to believe that. It's why the hijack stories of Chelsea coming in, I feel as though Chelsea may have an interest. Of course they may. He's a very highly touted player, but the level of work Arsenal have done, the desire he has to join, I just don't see anybody, in my opinion, right now, especially with how good Arsenal are playing, the trajectory of the club, the feel-good factor. I see nothing stopping the deal happening in terms of teams coming in and hijacking the deal and being able to damage things along those lines. I know those stories came out. They come from credible sources, by the way, like Jacob Steinbeck and Fabrizio Romano. It wasn't just plucked out of the air by some desk journalist. They're legitimate, but Chelsea aren't going to be able to stop this deal from happening, are they?
Well, what you have to bear in mind is that the story of HIJACK comes from the fact that Shakhtar are quite prepared to entertain offers. Shakhtar are quite prepared to offer the player to other clubs because they want the highest possible price. So therefore, these links can have substance without being realistic, because it can be factually accurate that a player is offered to another club, and it can be factually accurate that it's highly unlikely that club will either move or succeed. And the reason why those two things can sit together is because from Shakhtar's point of view, they would love to get Arsenal at a point of an almost done deal and then say another club's come in with a HIJACK offer and they've offered us 90 million euros and Mudryk's prepared to join both. So therefore, you've either got to up your offer or we're only going to accept the HIJACK bid offer. And there's no 100% way that a club like Arsenal can categorically state, unless Chelsea are open with them and say it's nonsense, that there's not an element of truth in that. But my understanding with Mudryk and Chelsea is that there's very little to it. And that even though these clubs will all be across every top player in terms of their scouting, Chelsea's priority in January is not that Mudryk position. Because the thing with Mudryk is that, yes, he's an attack-minded player that Chelsea would love, but he's not a source of goals from out wide to the tune that Chelsea need. What he has is a high ceiling, a relatively low wage, and the ability, and this is why Arsenal want him, to develop from a left winger into somebody who already loves cutting inside that could maybe play more central in terms of either his starting position or game management, and also can go deeper and switch sides. And that allows him to be the complete package. And he's so willing to learn, and he's got so much raw talent that Arsenal see a lot of variations in the kind of role that he can play. But right now, if you're Chelsea and you buy Mudryk, you've got a lot of players in that position. And of course, Chelsea could decide to get rid of some of their creative-minded players, Pulisic, even though he started the last 2 games, Hakim Ziyech as well. But generally speaking, you add Mudryk, and it doesn't solve the Chelsea problem. I think if you speak to Chelsea fans and say, where do you need to strengthen? They'll say midfield, and they'll say goals, and they'll say defence. They still want a right back. They want a central midfielder, and they want somebody that is going to add enough goals to get them into the Champions League. Mykhailo Mudryk may create those goals, may score some of those goals, but he doesn't fall into that category. So if Chelsea succeed in Enzo Fernandez, they've already spent a massive amount. And then they could still move for one more in midfield, and they may still want to look at full-back options too. And they've got a plan for the summer where they want to enter either, or maybe even both, the Jude Bellingham and the Declan Rice race. I mean, they'll be involved in both, but I don't think they genuinely believe they're going to get both of those players. So then if you've got to find 70 million euros for Mudryk as well, at that point, financial fair play does come to the fore to some extent. So I haven't been told that there is too much in this Chelsea and Mudryk deal. And also, even if there was, at the moment, Mudryk wants Arsenal. So there's only one club that realistically can get Mudryk at the moment, and that's Arsenal. Because if Arsenal agree a deal with Shakhtar, then it doesn't matter who else comes in. Mykhailo Mudryk is going to pick Arsenal.